question is that the report on the Social Services Committee in the 2019 financial review of the Ministry of Social Development be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. The contrary opinion will say no. The ayes have it. I understand the next financial review that members wish to debate is the financial review of the Department of Labour. The question before the House is that the report of the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee of the Department of Labour be noted. I call Darian Fenton.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, I think next week brings to fruition the changes that were being considered during the period of the financial review of the Department of Labour. On the 1st of April, there will be many changes for New Zealand workers, and while this House will be in recess, New Zealand will be going backwards because this government has no plan other than to attack workers' rights and to take their rights away from them in a pathetic attempt to try and prove to the rest of the world or rest of the country that they actually have a plan. So next week on the 1st of April, the 90-day no rights or fire at will employment law brought in by the Minister of Labour, Kate Wilkinson, will become law for every worker in New Zealand. Every worker in New Zealand, when they change jobs from next week, from the 1st of April, will be subjected to a period where they have absolutely no rights to ask how they've been, why they may have been dismissed, and no rights to challenge that dismissal. Now, this has been put up by the Minister as some kind of economic plan, some kind of reason to take the country forward. Well, they are so out of touch, Mr Chair, with this country that they have no idea. Ordinary Kiwis who are struggling to make ends meet are simply going to find that this makes their life harder. It's going to make things worse, not better. And they've forgotten how to talk to ordinary people and their families. And so what we've been doing, what Labor's been doing in this period, and everybody knows this has been a very heated debate in the House, and it will continue to be a heated debate. We've been out there talking to ordinary people, and what they're telling us is this government is not working for them and their families, but they're working for their mates and foreign interests. Now, we had the ridiculous situation where the Minister has claimed from a very, very unsupportable report from NZIER that 13,000 new jobs were created under the 90-day no rights trial period for workplaces of less than 20. When you look at the research, when you unpack it, Mr Chair, it is simply ridiculous. What they did is take a statistical period and say that must be an indicator that somehow small businesses are creating more jobs because there was a difference between workplaces with less than 20 workers and workplaces with more than 20 workers. They didn't take into account any other things that were happening, such as assistance that was being targeted at the time at small business, other stimulus measures which could have assisted small business, and upheaval in the economy, for example. So I think when the Minister makes claims about the NZIER report creating 13,000 jobs, well, certainly I'm going to look forward, Labor will look forward to seeing the huge creation of jobs that they claim, their policy, when it's applied to all workplaces, is suddenly we're going to see all these jobs created throughout New Zealand. It's a weak argument. It's very weak. And in addition to that, during this financial review period, Mr Chair, the other Labor law changes that we have seen, there are many actually, but I want to concentrate on a few. One is the denial of union representatives to workplaces, to union access to workplaces. What they have to do now is ask permission from an employer. They have to wait up to 2 days for permission. Apparently it can't be unreasonably withheld. Now, I'm really interested because particularly in the light of recent events, the awful situation in Christchurch and the Pike River mine, I'm really interested in the proposal that was taken to Cabinet last year where actually her department was saying this consent should not have to be applied when it involves health and safety, Mr Chair, when it involves the health and safety of union members. That advice was taken by the Minister to Cabinet and it was from her department. I want to know what happened to it because it never turned up in the bill, and I think that she will live to regret that decision, that union representatives will have to wait up to 2 days to get consent to enter in a workplace, and particularly when it's in regard to health and safety matters. And then we have, of course, the other things that have happened in this period, like the so-called Hobbit law change. The Hobbit law change, absolutely disgraceful. This was a government that was completely run over by multinational interests, terrified by the filmmakers of America who came here, Mr Chair.
The call, Barty and Fenton.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Who came here and threatened to remove their industry if it wasn't about, actually, it was never about the Actors Union. It was never about that. It was always about a multinational company trying to dictate to New Zealand about what employment rights should be in this country. And what happened in that debate and in that law change was a whole category of workers, not just actors, but cleaners and drivers and catering workers, anyone that works in the film and video production industry, no longer have rights as employees. They no longer have the right to challenge the fact that they can be employed without rights under the Employment Relations Act. That's what's happened. Don't look puzzled, Mr McIntyre. That's absolutely what happened. No, of course it's true. And that makes us extremely worried about who's next. Who is the next category of workers on the list? And then, of course, what happens next week on the 1st of April is the holidays changes. The holidays changes. Here we have a country where workers are working longer hours than ever. In fact, longer hours than ever, so our productivity's gone up because they're working longer hours and getting paid less, not because we've improved productivity. And what we have is a government saying we should reduce their rights to holidays, not increase them. And then the other thing, of course, that happened in the last period of the financial review was the meals and rest breaks. Now, remember that. Remember that? Those dreadful air traffic controllers who are being so unreasonable because we had a meals and rest breaks law that said that they were entitled to a break after 8 hours and after 4 hours, and it was so unreasonable the whole country was going to be stopped, so they had to be rushed into Parliament, Mr Chair. And where is it now? Well, I think it's about number 16 on the order paper. I would like to know from the Minister in the Chair exactly what happened to the meals and rest breaks legislation. A year and a half ago, it was so urgent that we had to remove all of the rights from the whole country, all the rights to meals and rest breaks, and water it down so much because of these dreadful air traffic controllers. Well, something happened. Obviously, it was, of course it could be negotiated, and which is what always was the intention of that particular bill. And of course, it's now way down the. No, that's true. Well, now it's right down the bottom of the order paper. The other thing that's happened in this period, and it's mentioned in the financial report, Mr Chair, is the situation of the ID services workers. The situation of the ID services workers who for the last 3 or 4 years have been through 3 courts now, 3 courts, including the Court of Appeal, where the government joined the appeal to try to stop them getting minimum wage for working overnight, looking after our most vulnerable citizens. Now, at the time, the 3 courts have now said they are right, it is work, they should be paid minimum wage. What's the government done? Absolutely nothing. We called on the government to sit down and negotiate with the stakeholders, with the union and others who are completely willing to do this to find a durable solution for this issue. And they have done nothing. Instead, now we have IHC going off to the Supreme Court, wasting money that they don't have wasting money. They do not have money that is allocated by the government for the care of vulnerable people and treating workers absolutely like rubbish. And here we go, yet another group of low-paid workers who are going to have to put up with this for the next little while. And then finally, Mr Chair, minimum wage next week, minimum wage up by 25 cents an hour, up by 25 cents an hour. The Minister's own advice was 25 cents an hour, okay, 50 cents an hour was affordable. They could have done it, they could have put it up to 13, actually they could have put it up by 75 cents an hour. It was affordable, that was her advice. It would have had negligible impact on employment. It would have, and it's not about losing jobs, it's about jobs that might be created. It would have had negligible impact on employment, and what her own department's advice was that 25 cents is a no increase at all. It's not an increase in real terms. It's insulting. Those workers are having to try to make ends meet along with everybody else. It just shows how completely out of touch this government is. This government is. And Labor will give a fair go for everybody, and we will make people pay, make sure people will pay their fair share.
I call Michael Woodhouse.
Mr Chairman.